Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. Government is exploring the possibility of using the Indian Air Force for transportation of the NEET UG papers to ensure foolproof conduct of the retest on June 21st. This is what the official sources have been saying since yesterday. Now, the option was explored at a high level meeting, which was chaired by Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and attended by Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan and Minister for Communications Jyotir Aditya Scindia. Now, the ministers and the senior officials discussed whether IAF aircraft could be used for transportation of the NEET UG test papers. However, as of now, no final decision has been taken, but the option will be placed before the Prime Minister for a final view. That is what they are saying. But the very idea which has germinated of having the NEET exams under the supervision of the IF aircrafts is a little bizarre, because if you look at the social media reactions, people are lambasting the move left, right, and center. That why on earth do you need the Indian Air Force planes to cover up for the incompetence of the system, for the incompetence of the education ministry, for the incompetence of this entire system, whether it is the rot which has set in CBSE, because this is what we are going to discuss. That is this a further trivialization of the armed forces? Why on earth do we need the armed forces involvement in conducting an exam? That's what is beyond understanding. This really reminds of the manner in which the exams are conducted in China. You remember the Gaokao exam, which is the most prestigious exam of China, which is where the examination papers are treated as state assets, and which is why the exam is conducted under the full supervision of their armed forces. Once upon a time, if you remember, in Pakistan as well, Musharraf had used this style. So why on earth are we really using our armed forces for conducting exams like NEET, even if it's a re-exam which is to be conducted on June 21st? Is this a beginning which is dangerous? That is one question. Then, as far as the OSM scam of the CBSE is concerned, that itself is worrisome, because now what has happened is, and I'm going to show you a tweet put out by Mohammed Zubair, the renowned fact checker of the country. He has shown how the various principals of the CBSE schools have started recording Insta reels saying that OSM is all right, and OSM, there's nothing wrong with the OSM. And this is what Mohammed Zubair has tweeted. After mismanaging the entire system, CBSE has now switched to damage control mode. CBSE is sending scripts to school principals to defend the on-screen marking system. Principals marking the Insta reels, repeating the same lines given by CBSE. And now, if you have seen Dharmendra Pradhan, the education minister, this is what he had to say in the morning. And he said that, yes, we agree that there were systemic flaws, there were problems within the system. We'll try and address this. Now, Rahul Gandhi's tweet also is very, very important. And look at what he has said. And this is the news which came out in the papers, that CBSE had floated 3 tenders for OSM before finding qualified vendor. And Rahul Gandhi has put out the details in his tweet, that how a company like TCS was sidelined to include a company like COEMPT, that is COEMT, which did not have the competence, which did not meet the standards, but the system lowered the standards to accommodate a company like COEMT. This is what Rahul Gandhi has tweeted. So now the big question is that how will this rot be addressed? Whether it is NEET, whether it is the CBSE exams, there's thousands and thousands, in fact, lakhs and lakhs of students are still waiting as to what is going to happen to the revaluation process, which is not opened. The reevaluation window was from 26 to 29. I just checked the website. The reevaluation window has not opened yet. Lakhs and lakhs of students are still waiting because they've got the PDFs, which are blurry. Students have realized now what the flaws have been. They've not got marks. Some have got, they haven't got adequate marks. Some of them have not been marked. So all those systemic failures are resulting, and the reevaluation window, we do not know when it's going to open, when they will get a reevaluated mark sheet. Nobody knows that. So there are two examination problems we are looking at. First, NEET. What is the need for an IF aircraft to be used in an exam like NEET? Why do we need it? What is the idea? Why the government wants to do this? And secondly, how do we address the OSM scam? Joining me this evening is Professor Ajay Gudawardi from Jawaharlal Nehru University. He's the author and also someone who tracks the political and the social movements very carefully. Anchal Gupta also joins us. He's from the Yuva Halla Bol. He's a researcher of this students movement body. Thank you so much, Anchal, for joining. We have Professor Tanveer Ejaz from Delhi's Ramjas College. Thank you so much, Tanveer, for joining. And let me begin with Professor Ajay Gudawarti. I want to understand from you the logic behind government using the Indian Air Force aircrafts to carry and transport the NEET re-exam papers. What's the need?
Well, Neetu, I think there has been a consistent Bollywoodization of governance in this country. That governance is now reflecting Bollywood. Therefore, I think, as we were discussing earlier too, I think crisis is now a structural need for demagogues all over the world. Crisis does not happen, but crisis is created. So all these crises that we have been witnessing last 10 years has been created due to conscious encouragement of inefficiency. The armed forces, you have 2-star armed forces who are made overnight 4-star. You have in universities assistant professors who are made overnight professors and vice chancellors. You have bureaucrats who are overnight made principal secretaries. So deliberately inefficiency is encouraged, corruption is encouraged, that is linked to privatization. So this is the nature of structural crisis, and the leadership does not placate or plug this crisis. It in fact encourages, because once you encourage the crisis, then the leader becomes indifferent. Therefore, we all look forward to Mr. Modi as the savior. So this is an endemic vicious logic that the system has created in the last 10 years. You create the crisis, therefore the dependence on the leadership grows. Leader becomes the only solution for placating the crisis. So this is a very dangerous logic, and therefore the use of armed forces is that kind of a thing where we are looking forward to someone to come and save us, and he comes down. Modi ji is busy otherwise in abroad. He is looking after national interest. So this is the optics in the popular domain we need to understand. He is busy abroad. He is working hard. But there are all these guys who are creating a lot of moral and ethical crisis because everyone else is set up.
If I may interrupt you, now the very involvement of the armed forces or the Indian Air Force aircraft, does it mean that now there will be no scope for asking questions? Because if it gets leaked, now the Indian Air Force will be involved, the Air Force plane will be involved, so now nobody can ask questions, it's like a period on all the questions. Because this is something which is managed by the armed forces, you can't be raising questions. Is that what the end motive is?
Yeah, so there are two dimensions to it. One is the Singham kind of movement, that Modi ji comes, then he does the big ticket changes. He will now supervise personally, he will supervise armed forces and aircrafts flowing in, jets will be carrying. This makes for great optics for common people, under a populist thing. This makes for Singham coming and taking control because everybody else is corrupt in the system.
And for the Modi media, it's like a picture moment in the media. Yeah.
So that's the issue. And the other side of it, obviously, invoking armed forces, and is that there can be no public reasoning. There can be no public discussion. Tomorrow, if there is, in spite of this, a leak, because the nature of exams, papers are getting leaked on WhatsApp. What will flying in question papers in jet flylet, what will it do? It will do next to nothing. And you have done nothing to set the system right. So tomorrow there might still be leakages. Then you will say that this is. So it might also be to, over a period of time, discredit and weaken the armed forces, because you are normalizing their failure. You're saying even they cannot manage. So then it is further dependence on a leader. So creating a structural crisis, giving the optics that there's a moral crisis in the country, that most people are corrupt, most people are inefficient. So what is the logic? The logic is that people then start demanding that you should have a strong leader. You should have a presidential system. You should have everything under Modi's control. But the point that opposition needs to explain, and that's the third part of this imagination and this design, is that it also puts opposition on the back foot. because you have the solution and the crisis both within the government. The crisis is in the governance model, crisis is in the system. Who is the solution? Modi. Because Modi is considered an outsider to the political system. Therefore, where is the opposition in this? That's one reason why opposition is struggling in this country. Because even opposition unknowingly or unknowingly falls victim to this logic, which is what Mr. Modi wants, because they start appealing to Mr. Modi. Modi is quiet. Modi should come and speak on this. Modi should say something. It gives the I mean, opposition might be imagining that they're putting Modi, they're saying that the buck stops with Modi. But for common people, the optics would be it is even opposition is bent on seeing Modi as Mr. Savior. So this is the optics he wants to create, and unfortunately, opposition is falling into that logic. I think what opposition therefore needs to do, Neelu, is not merely give the crisis in terms of numbers, nature of crisis, technicalities, how many, OSM, what happened. Opposition should give a perspective to people to how to look at this crisis.
That's
Once
right.
you give that, rest of the story and the script will be written by people themselves. Today, people are struggling to have a perspective because the crisis looks so deep. There is a moral degeneration, and Modi is standing above it. We need to connect these two things, that it is Modi's decision, Modi's model of governance, which is creating this crisis. There cannot be a larger than life Modi's image without a crisis, and therefore he has to keep creating a crisis. If there is no crisis, imagine a society where exams are happening on time, economy is doing reasonably well, armed forces are managing our borders. Then where is the need for a larger than life image of Mr. Modi? Will be any other prime minister, and none of them can afford to be any other, because generally they are not very efficient and good. So they need to create this crisis to project themselves as larger than life. I think
Right.
this logic that is being very consciously engineered and being created needs to be communicated to the people. Once they get this perspective, this big picture, if giving just facts won't help. OSM has come, they've given it to some agency, then that corruption, all the technicalities is what people will get lost in the maze of things. We have to
Right.
give them the big picture. This is what is being done. As long as Mr. Modi's larger than life image and admiration remains, crisis will deepen in the system. This
Right.
communication should go, and NEET and CBSE are glaring examples of that.
Right. Now, let me get in a view on what the youth might feel. And let me come to Anchal and then I'll come to Tanveer. Anchal, how would the youths who are going to give the NEET re exam on 21st, in the midst of so much of deep distrust, they will be giving the exam? And here you have a prime minister who's playing up with the optics of, the boxes being packed with the NEET re-exam papers. Now they're being transported by the Indian Air Force aircrafts. How does it play out in the minds of the students who will be giving this re-exam? Does this optics help, and does it give them reassurance that, look, we will have the exams under safe environment, our paper will not be leaked? Does it reassure the students?
Uh, Niluji, thank you so much for having me on this show. Uh, I honestly believe that most of the students who have appeared for NEET or who had been preparing for NEET as well and similar exams at the national level, now with the 2026 NEET paper leak, have completely lost trust in the system, especially the system as is being conducted under this government. There is absolutely no doubt that already statistics are available, and I may minorly differ with Professor Godavardi here when I say that sometimes to certain sections of the population, some hard facts do need to be told, but definitely not all the facts to all the people all the time. We do not need to make it so technical, but the students need to be told that whatever jobs they thought of, whatever futures they thought of, now it is at the mercy of this government. If and when it wants and how it wants, that's how the country is going to be run. That is how some of them might get some jobs, some of them might get some seats in some universities and colleges. The entire education system currently is reflective of the gross decay and rot that is there at the very top of our political system right now, especially the party in power and the people who are running the government, the executive. See, very simple questions need to be asked. How are we going to provide jobs to the vast majority of the youth workforce, which is the largest in the world right now? 83% of our youth, 83% of our workforce right now is unorganized sector workforce. They do not have any fixed term contracts, any kind of fixed term salaries. 22 lakh people are going through unimaginable amount of stress and put a put another 3 or 4 members in each of those families. That's like more than 1 crore people, or nearly 1 crore people, are going through unimaginable stress right now. India is the suicide capital of the world, with already statistics say that the number of deaths by suicide already crossed, of students and youth actually crossed the number of deaths by suicide of farmers over the last few years in this country. So we can imagine that the distress among the educated or semi-educated youth and the youth who are wanting to have some kind of jobs through education are no less in terms of their intensity and their nature than the distress of the farming community of this country. So there is absolutely no doubt, on every aspect of human life, on every aspect of community, on every aspect of every right that the Constitution enshrines in it, that the Constitution ensures, that the system is supposed to ensure, this government has failed. And now it is trying every tactic in the book to just ensure that a superhuman image of one person is shown to the one all and be all of all problems, the solution of all problems. And as Professor Sir said, that now it is up to a united, focused, dedicated opposition that hits home the point that enough is enough. We are actually now beyond that state where we used to be some kind of a decently functioning democracy. We are totally an electoral autocracy, or whatever we want to call it, but we are at the mercy of a few people at the top who are deciding what happens with what community when. So as a united front, opposition has to hit home this point with Gen Z and all other sections of the youth and all other age group population, that see, we will have pretty soon no rights left whatsoever, and only we will be supposed to conduct some duties as the powers be that we decide. So that's where I end my point here.
Let me come to Professor Tanveer now, and I want to understand from you the logic of the government behind using these Indian Air Force aircrafts to transport the NEET re-exam papers. What is the idea of the government? And do you see this as a beginning of something very dangerous? Because this is in context with the NEET papers which have got leaked. Now, there are so many other competitive exams which are happening in the country. They are also getting leaked. So is Prime Minister or the government mulling over the fact that any competitive exam will now be done under the supervision of the armed forces?
Thank you so much for having me here. So can you hear me? Because I was struggling with...
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. See, in any democracy, there is a role of institutions, right? Executive has to perform certain functions. Legislature has to perform certain functions. Now, the point is that, the examination has to be performed by certain institutions. Air Force is not meant to perform the functions of the education ministry, right? Now, look at the kind of functional overlap which is going on here. Suppose legislature work is done by executive work is done by courts, a court's work would be done by media, it's like, it could not be more chaotic than this, right? So what I understand is that, why to politicize, Air Force also, right, at this moment? Because I'm very sure that this particular action or this particular decision has been taken for, there is a panic which is there in the government right now at the moment, right? I mean, of course, I agree with Ajay's formulation that there is this whole construction of cult leadership, right? But the fact is that, there is a whole lot of anger, in Gen Z. That's what I'm, every day I'm talking about since this week. The students are very angry, against the government. And the trust, of course, which has been lost by the students, it's very difficult. You can't just put on band-aid here and there and you think that you can solve the problem, right? I mean, it's so foolish to utilize Air Force here, where when you see that that there are so many leakage points. It's not just one that it's only carrying out the sheets, but right from the formulation of questions, the calling of experts, where they are making those questions. So there's so many points, what you can call it as a supply chain points, right? And how many points you can plug, how many loopholes can you plug? You can't do all of them. As I said, that this whole contractualization, privatization, you are building trust on market, And market itself is so imperfect. Market itself is so chaotic. Market doesn't run on rule of law. Market doesn't run on rules, principles, nothing. It's survival of the fittest in the market, right? And minting of money as much as possible. Private profit maximization is the credo of the market. Now, do you think that they are going to listen to anything? I mean, they can find lots of loopholes. So malfeasance and misfeasance both, right? I know, that there are loopholes, right? There are loopholes in the whole procedure of conducting examination and evaluation. So many loopholes are there, and everybody knows about it, right? As I said, that how do you call experts? Who are the experts? We never know that who are these experts. I mean, or perhaps forget about the experts. Do they have the expertise to make those MCQs, right? Forget about that. I mean, the office where this has been made, is it foolproof? Where are the questions? I mean, how are you using the technology? Technology itself,
Tanveer,
Adhikari has said that technology itself has structural flaws, right?
Professor Tanveer, isn't this laughable and ludicrous? Because the papers are getting leaked on Telegram, the papers are getting leaked on WhatsApp, and then you have a government which is saying that no, the system is going to be safe. We will be transporting those re-exam papers on an Indian Air Force aircraft. Now, what kind of a joke is it?
They think that they can build on the trust by saying that Indian Air Force or defense, perhaps, when they are used, everything is fine, there's no corruption. But the fact is that we are knowing that the defense forces, I mean, all major corruption cases in India, Bofors, Rafale, all these are in the defense forces only, right? So how do you expect that things would be very clean and efficient, and then there would be no corruption? Right, but it is just one part of the whole process. There are so many processes in this, and which is open to the market. I would just like to talk about the simple fact about this recent CBSE fiasco. I mean, how the contract was given to this particular company, whose history is checkered. Earlier, it was held in another name, then build up a consortium with other sister companies. So I'm so aghast by the fact that this whole public-private partnership in education, laying it open to the market, and then saying that everything will be fine, and playing the lives of students like this. I think it is disastrous.
No, but you made an important point, and I'll come to Ajay on that. That you've left the education system to the market-driven forces, where you have a public and a private partnership. Now we do not know whose vested interests are involved. Of course, if I'm a BJP person, my son-in-law or my brother is involved with building up a system which. Where the CBSE examinations are involved, I will happily give him that contract, no matter how low the benchmarks are, no matter whether they meet the yardsticks or not, like what was done in this case, what Rahul Gandhi tweeted. Shubham, if you're there backstage, and if you can just pull out Rahul Gandhi's tweet, what he has mentioned is the fact that TCS in the third round got cleared. But then later on, ultimately the contract went to a company which was known to fail in 2019 in Telangana. Now, what does that go to show? And what is the solution? Also, the larger question, Ajay, that how do we address this rot now? Do we scrap the OSM system? Do we start a fresh training process completely for the teachers and just rehaul the system entirely? And similar things with the NEET. We've not been able to prevent the leak of the NEET papers. It happened in 2024 also. Again, we are witnessing the same thing in 2026. So which means that no holes are being plugged. It's just a band-aid method which is being adopted by the government temporarily. And then again, you find those flaws resurfacing again.
Neeru, I think the crisis is much deeper than what you're suggesting. I think the very process of digitalization and technological intervention is being introduced in this country to create inefficiency and pilferage. These are two linked unless we don't see the process properly. The technology is being introduced to create opaqueness, to control information, and it is not being increased for transparency and efficiency. So the logic they will tell you is that we are going for no transparency, will make more efficient, but they don't give, there is no preparedness. There is no training when you introduce something. And we are seeing this in universities very clearly, that they introduce a digital platform. No, today in universities, the condition is, Neelu, to apply leave, you have to apply digitally. Then you have to carry a physical paper to the section officer because the officer sitting there doesn't know how to operate the system. So you send it and then you run giving a paper, and then there's a confusion created. He will say it has not come through digital, but you have arrived physically first. You should come after the digital comes. So I don't think this is just an happenstance. This is a very deliberate method of governing, because the ultimate purpose that right has is people silencing and submission. So you are in a
No,
perpetual
Ajay,
state of
there's another thing.
uncertainty.
There is another thing, and this is an old tendency of the government to float any and everything without a proper trial. Look at what happened with the demonetization. Look at what happened and how miserably the GST failed. Similarly, all new things which are introduced by the government, they're just floated like trial balloons, and they would not worry whether the people are going to be affected. Like in this case, there are students who are affected. They were not bothered that it's going to impact the future of the students. They were more interested how this co-empt company gets to benefit and how this OSM system is launched without any proper trials, without any training. And yesterday only we were discussing that how the governing body members had warned CBSE that this system should not be implemented, but even then they went ahead with that without any regional trials. Yes,
Absolutely.
Ajay.
So there, I think it's not a rocket science for them to know that they're giving a firm which already has a certain track record. Why would that happen? If their intention was clean, if they really wanted an efficient system, there's no way this can happen. So the intention is very clear, but the optics, what we have to focus is on the optics. Optics is saaf niyat. That Modi ji has a clean intent, wants to make the system efficient, but people are not able to manage because people are corrupt. And therefore Modi has to have greater support to make him more strong so that he can implement it more efficiently. So it's a very, very cyclical, vicious cycle people are caught in. That's one reason why they're not able to come out. Therefore, I don't think Gen Z being angry would immediately reflect on the streets unless Gen Z know the causation. If Gen Z is also caught in this logic, if they think Modi's intention is clear, it's as we say, OSM is good, digitalization is good, but it's not working for because people are not trained, but because people are corrupt, but Modi's intention is good. Once you have this logic, people are not going to spill on the streets because people will still have a hope. There is someone in the system with a clean intent and want to efficiently do things. The point is that how do you explain this diabolical, vicious nature of the cycle? That the crisis is being deliberately imputed, that it's being deliberately planted. I think that is the key point that we need to really focus on. The rest of things can follow. And a clarification to Anshul that it's not that facts are not important, but facts don't speak for themselves. Facts have to be backed by a perspective and put into a storyline. They don't write a script of their own. If you simply narrate a set of facts and imagine that will do the magic, that people will get convinced. So like this, the facts can be announced, 100 leaks in Modi's regime. This is a fact. But if people think Modi is not responsible for it, Modi is in the process of correcting this malaise, people will still have hope. In fact, that will strengthen Modi's logic, which is what is happening. Is the greater the crisis, the stronger Modi becomes. We keep harping on the crisis, but we fail to make the link. That how do you then hold Modi accountable for the crisis is the key question. When it comes to that, Mr. Modi goes to armed forces, then he goes to Air Force, then he goes to Parliament, then he says, look, I'm with the best. Why is he going to armed forces? Because armed forces still relatively have better image. There is a trust factor. People will trust. So again, Modi's intention, साफ नियत है, लेकिन लोग करप्ट है. तो क्या करे? मोदी को और मजबूत बनाओ. मोदी को मजबूत मतलब make the system less accountable, break procedures. So therefore, the logic of executive overreach comes from people. So they're creating this demand from people for an executive overreach. So when we talk about procedures, democracy, Rahul Gandhi's, compassion, it all looks weak. It looks like we are weak. We are inefficient. We are not that strong. We are not the bolstering. Rahul is not that masculine image. That's the logic that is flowing on system. Therefore, whenever a crisis is created, I would suggest opposition should stop appealing to Modi. Should say that Modi should hold him responsible. That and say that this is a crisis deliberately cultivated in the last 10 years. because we can see the contrast very easily under UPA 2 and 1 and 2 system ran. Why UPA 1950 to now? IIMs ran well, IITs ran well, AIMS ran well, Election Commission ran well, JNU did well. We were not perfect, but even on under global comparison with African, Latin American, Southeast Asian nations, we were right there. Our systems were working. We had good, efficient, committed people manning. I tell you, incident, Mr. Nehru invited Sukhmai Chakravarti, who was 36-year-old economist from abroad, and handed over Delhi school to him. That's how people do. Those who love their crafts, you appointed them. But here is a system which is both scared of efficient experts and has contempt for poor. It is contempt for experts, contempt for poor, contempt for elite, contempt for the weak. So this kind of a system is drawing us into a vicious cycle. And the danger is if this doesn't get, it's a self-serving vicious cycle. More the crisis, greater the leader becomes stronger. It is not the usual democratic logic where if you're being held accountable. We are in a populist authoritarian regime. Therefore, the crisis needs to be explained and put forth beyond facts through the perspective explaining these very complex linkages that we have to give them credit for evolving, even if it's evil. It's a genius evil. That's the one.
Yeah, absolutely. And even contemptuous of the due procedures. Now, say, for example, what happened in OSM. The first and foremost requirement was that if you have a new system like OSM, at least train your teachers, have proper workshops, prepare a pilot project, but nothing of that sort was done. It was imposed in the last 2-3 months, and then here you have what has come out in the public domain.
See, a friend of mine was recently saying that some journalist went on to write about Piyush Goyal, and he had very laudatory things to tell Piyush Goyal. The journalist got a call from Piyush Goyal saying, "Don't praise me too much; I'll attract wrath of the Mahamana." That's you're not allowed to be efficient in this system. If you're allowed to, you're efficient and you attract goodwill, then you are under scanner. So people are all also working, even those who are good and efficient are all working on suboptimum level because they don't want to attract extra attention. They don't want to be known as efficient. They don't want to be accountable. So there's also this other logic that is running in the system.
Right. I want to conclude the program by taking comments from Anchal and Tanveer. I'll also come to you. Anchal, to you first. Now, what is the hope left? We have a miserable system. We are all facing day in and day out what we are seeing, we are discussing, we are going through all of that. But what is the hope? Can the government give you any sort of hope at this point of time? Are we in a position to say, like, for example, I'll give you my daughter's example. She has appeared for class 12 examination. She's also undergoing the same anxiety. She's not been marked for 3-4 questions. They have been left unchecked. She's short on marks, like by 6 marks, 7 marks. She's not been marked. And not that she had a very poor percentage, but the girl was saying that I was expecting anything above 90, and now she's there in her late 80s. So isn't that an anxious moment? And what is the hope for such students?
Neeluji, I very honestly believe that the true real hope, and taking forward from what Professor Sir was saying, Professor Godavarti Sir, is that a grassroots-led pan-India youth movement, where of course people from other age groups also eventually join, that is the only hope that I see going forward, because every aspect of human life, every aspect of collective life, every aspect of individual, be it in any age group or any demographic or any socioeconomic category, everyone is suffering. So we need to provide that larger perspective, as he very clearly said, that we do not, rather than focusing too much on the minutiae of different democratic ideals and principles and all that, we need to think that it is a popular authoritarian state and how the dynamics of it works. And we need to take the Modi, whatever that charismatic thing that has been very cultivated and manufactured, head on, the opposition, the youth groups and everyone together, and a very peaceful democratic mass movement to hold this government accountable, to hold this regime accountable, and to demand accountability, to demand clear, definite change. And that can only bring about when the opposition, all the opposition, get its act together, and civil society and all other civil society groups also come together, because that is the only way I see out of it.
Come for the concluding comments to Tanveer. What would you say towards the end?
At the end, I think it's a very difficult situation that we are going through. because we are seeing that all kinds of institutions, all political, administrative, all institutions, they're not working well, and they're declining, they are regressing. So one, of course, the solution that has been said right now is that there need to be a movement. So of course, movement has lots of problems and lots of issues. Uh, I think what is important at the moment is that we need to demand. The students need to demand. Let the students demand for compensation, because so much wrong has been done to them, so many suicides. So some kind of compensation has to be given to them. Right now, there has to be a movement for compensation, compensating students. Right, and the second thing is about fixing of the accountability. So how we can fix up the accountability? Now, we all know that in a parliamentary democracy, accountability, fixing of accountability would then move down to some officials in NTA or some officials in CBSE, or maybe this particular company would be blacklisted. But that doesn't solve the problem. See, in a democracy, parliamentary democracy, the accountability always should rest with the minister, because who took that decision? I mean, in the whole process, I was just reading through the whole process. There were 3 attempts for the bids. And in the final bid, where this guy was given the contract, the vendor, the technical requirements were diluted to an extent that this was to happen. Right. So not only just technical requirements were so much diluted, but also financial requirements. So therefore, want to say that all contracts. I agree to Rahul Gandhi's demand that there has to be a thorough investigation. So I think that all contracts this government is giving to private vendor needs to be investigated thoroughly. Needs to be investigated, because this whole business model of education, of health, where I mean, just imagine the TCS asked for 60 rupees to scan the paper, and this company says 25 rupees to a scan. Can you make out the difference? Do you think that it can be done without doing all sorts of corrupt practices? So I think I think that we need to focus. Let us educate everyone about the contract system that is being done. In our university, look at the way how contracts are being done. We don't know. I mean, why somebody gets the contract all the time? I mean, this whole centralization of contracts business also is very dangerous. So I think that the whole process, let us build a movement. I mean, this is a civic culture movement. Let us try to build up a movement, at least to have a rule of law. That rule of law doesn't, we don't see any semblance of following of rule of law. So therefore, I think I agree with Achal that we need to have a solid movement. And Gen Z, no matter, see, all this technology sector is being held captive by the technology sharks, or feudal who act like feudals, right? So if they are there, if the private technology sharks are there, they are there for private profit maximization. So this is bound to happen. Why aren't we going back to traditional? Or you must have a foolproof system. I mean, look at this. Adhikari hacked, right? And he called it as ethical hacking. What is the probability that this particular exam, which is going on 21st, will not be hacked? It is only
Absolutely.
post facto fixation that you do, but in the process you
The
leave
government
it.
is trying, no, the government is trying to make you believe that, look, we will have an IF aeroplane, and therefore you should start believing that the system won't be hacked. The exams will be totally safe. This is what the government wants you to believe.
But IAF cannot check hacking. They'll be carrying
That's
papers.
also the
Hacking is
question.
done anywhere, any place, right? So therefore, unless and until you have a foolproof system, don't enter into it. Right? That's what my submission is. And of course, the students will demand. The students must demand two things. One is compensation, the kind of mental trauma, the kind of agony, the kind of, I mean, the suspicion, the kind of distrust that they are having with public systems. So they must demand for compensation, right? And then secondly, they must demand for fixing up of accountability. We do not have in India, we do not have accountability culture, right? Across in all democracy, we have accountability culture. And we do not have. You see, the moment I ask question, I've been labeled, all sorts of names are given to me. Now, if this is the accountability culture, then how government is going to work? Because you see, government seldom tells the truth. Government seldom tells the truth. Government lies through its own teeth, right? Irrespective of any
Absolutely.
government. Right? So how do we question? So therefore we need to question
Absolutely.
them.
In fact, if you look at this entire problem, in totality, it's very clear what we are discussing. Do you think that the government is not discussing, or the ministers don't discuss it among themselves, or the prime minister doesn't discuss all of this? They do discuss, but they want to deflect the attention. They are putting up a smoke screen that, look, we are concerned, we are very much bothered about our students. Every day you will find sound bites like that. But is anything being done? It's like so many days. Is it so difficult for the government to solve this problem? It's not. It's a simple thing. Scrap the systems which are not working, bring in a system which can work and address the anxieties of your students, because they involve the future of the country. But the government doesn't want to do it. What they are more interested is dole out contracts, earn money, fill up your pockets, bhad mein jai janta. That's the attitude of the government. That's why. Yes.
It's so unfortunate that this whole crony capitalism, has entered into the education system, right? It has entered into health system. It has entered into education system. Now, in education, you see, the students are the worst sufferers, right? Not that the parents are not, I mean, of course, it's not in India. We know that it's not only the student that they give exam; the whole family gives the exam, right? So the whole family is in trouble. So this, I think we need to ask questions on this crony capitalism getting into education system.
I hope these questions are asked and these questions are addressed. But for now, I'm not hopeful, because this is a rotten system. It's not that one or two incidents happen and the system is going to be addressed, and all of a sudden there's a sudden awakening in the government and they'll start cleaning up the system. It's not going to happen like that. So, which is why there's not much of hope. But yes, if some invisible forces just come down and start thinking about the future of our students, then that will be a different story. And I hope that turns out to be really true. We'll have to end it here. Thank you so much, Professor Ejaz, Ajay Gudavarti, Anchal. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.